It's May 2008 and the Portsmouth Football Club players are making their way up the Wembley steps to lift the FA Cup trophy. But what was once one of Portsmouth's proudest moments
now win the FA Cup, it's a dream come true for me,
was quickly overshadowed and led to the club's downfall.
Are you sure?
In just 3 years, how does a club go from winning the FA Cup and playing in Europe to relegation to League 2? Portsmouth's squad once had the likes of Jermain Defoe, David James, Peter Crouch, Lassana Diarra, Sulley Muntari, Campbell and Glen Johnson. However, with over £100 million in debt, Portsmouth were forced into their second administration and dropped from England's top flight all the way down to the 4th tier league. In the end, after the bad ownerships, it was the fans who saved the club by purchasing it in 2013. And in this video, we look at what led to the downfall of Portsmouth Football Club. Let's take it all the way back to the 1998-99 season. Portsmouth faced a serious financial crisis and chairman Martin Gregory resigned after being targeted by abuse from Portsmouth fans, forcing him to sell his 97% ownership of the club. That season, Portsmouth narrowly avoided relegation from the now named Championship and were then saved from closure by new owner Milan Mandrick, who saved the club with a takeover deal in May 1999. Mandrick immediately started investing for Portsmouth's new season. Former West Ham manager Harry Redknapp took over as Director of Football in 2001, ushering in a golden era for the club. As Director of Football, Redknapp's sole responsibility was to recruit the best players who could also be sold for a tidy profit. For the start of the 2001-02 season, Portsmouth signed veteran Croatian playmaker Prozineski on a 1-year contract, as well as a young Peter Crouch. Redknapp eventually took over as manager, and Peter Crouch scored 19 goals for Portsmouth before being sold to Aston Villa for £5 million in March 2002. Portsmouth finished the season in 17th place, 4 points above relegation zone. Portsmouth led the first division for the majority of the 2002-03 season, with Todorov scoring 26 league goals, making him the league's top scorer at the end of the season. Portsmouth won the first division title on April 27, 2003, and were promoted to the Premier League, returning to the top tier of English football after a 15-year absence. Their Premier League debut season in 2003-04 season resulted in a 13th place finish. Redknapp resigned midway through his second Premier League campaign after a disagreement with chairman Mandrick and went to rivals Southampton. But this was short-lived, as Redknapp then made a surprise return to manage Portsmouth again after leaving Southampton relegated. In January 2006, Portsmouth underwent another ownership change when businessman Alexander Gaidamak bought the club. Gaidamak put a significant investment into the club, allowing them to assemble a whole new first team. With an increase in funds at Redknapp's disposal, the club achieved their highest finish since promotion, securing 9th place in the 2006-07 season, narrowly missing out on European qualification by just 1 point. Notable signings included Canoe from West Brom, Benjani as a record signing, Andy Cole, Campbell, Glen Johnson on loan from Chelsea, David James from Man City, Traore from Charlton, and Manuel Fernandez on loan from Benfica, among others. In the 2007-08 season, Redknapp signed 2 more high-quality players in the form of Diarra from Arsenal and Jermain Defoe from Tottenham in January, helping Portsmouth to a Premier League 8th place finish. Portsmouth faced Cardiff City in the FA Cup final at Wembley Stadium on May 17, 2008. The second such final at the newly built Wembley. Portsmouth won 1-0 with Canoe scoring the only goal. It was the second time Portsmouth had won the FA Cup. The FA Cup victory also qualified Portsmouth for the 2008-09 UEFA Cup, the club's first appearance in European competition. They played AC Milan, who had players like Ronaldinho at the time, in a 2-2 draw at Fratton Park. Portsmouth would finish 14th in the Premier League that season. The 2008 stock market crash caught many people off guard, including owner Gaidamak. As a result, Gaidamak was forced to withdraw all funding from Portsmouth, as well as having to sell their most valuable assets and highest earners in order to repay creditors. With the club now in £68 million in debt and with no way for Gaidamak to pose a guarantor on the loans, he was forced to sell the club. And on the 26th of May 2008, literally days after winning the FA Cup, Portsmouth accepted a bid from Emirati businessman Suleiman Al Farabi Bahrain to purchase the club, an Abu Dhabi property developer who claimed to have wealth nearing £3 billion. Al Fahim turned out to be a fraud, arrested for stealing £5 million from his wife. Before going to prison, he arranged another deal selling Portsmouth to Falcondrone, owned by Al Faraj, for the club's finances and surrounding land. Unfortunately, Portsmouth's streak of misfortune continued. Al Faraj claimed wealth turned out to be much less than expected, and he partially financed the purchase of the club with a £17 million loan from Balham Chorani's Poptin Limited. Unable to repay the loan and manage the club and land development, Al Faraj defaulted. As a result, Balram gained ownership of Portsmouth through Falcondrone and placed the club into administration to refinance its £135 million debts. Paychecks began to bounce in October of 2009. During the winter transfer window, the club was unable to make significant moves due to a transfer embargo. It was announced in December 2009 that the club had failed to pay the players for the second month in a row. Despite reaching the 2010 FA Cup final, Portsmouth were relegated to the Championship and faced a 9-point penalty from the FA, as well as being prohibited from participating in the Europa League. The squad also underwent significant changes, with players like Defoe, Diarra and Boateng all being offloaded. Portsmouth managed to survive their first season in the Championship, finishing 16th after spending several weeks at the bottom. In June 2011, Converse Sports Initiatives, owned by Russian Vladimir Antonov, completed his takeover of the club. And a recurring theme, just a few months later in November 2011, the new owner was arrested following an investigation into alleged asset stripping at a Lithuanian bank he owned. His Latvian bank was also suspended. Antonov resigned as chairman of Portsmouth, and on the 17th of February 2012, the club entered administration for the second time, incurring a 10-point deduction. Portsmouth were eventually relegated from the Championship on the 21st of April after a 2-1 loss to Derby. They would have finished the season on 50 points, good enough to stay up, but were relegated to League One for the first time in 30 years. Portsmouth's first season in the third division would be even worse than the previous season. In December 2012, the entire playing squad left the club, and the team were docked 10 points for their financial problems. Portsmouth was struggling to find a manager on a long-term basis due to their financial state. The club went on to a record winless run of 23 matches, finally ending on the 2nd of March 2013 as Portsmouth won 2-1 away at Crewe Alexandra. Portsmouth were relegated for the second time in a row to the League Two at the end of the season. As the club failed to avoid relegation to the 4th division, the Portsmouth Supporters Trust finally took over the club from the administrators. On September 29, 2014, the club made a historic announcement declaring itself debt-free after repaying all creditors and legacy payments to ex-players. The announcement came 18 months after PST took over the club. After 5 long years in League 2, Portsmouth finally found themselves promoted back into League 1 as champions in 2017. In the off-season, the PST voted in favour of accepting a bid from former Walt Disney CEO Michael Eisner. So Portsmouth are still fighting to get out of League 1 as of making this video in 2023, as despite a promising start to the 2022-23 season, a dismal run of just 1 win in 14 league games led to Portsmouth finishing in 8th place, 7 points below the playoff positions. However, the club's future is looking more promising, and the days of administration and near liquidation are hopefully behind them. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. We'll see you next time.